Wake up, Twins territory, and happy Tuesday night. It's been a couple weeks since we've been able to go live on a Tuesday, but we are back and ready to go. Obviously, we had some other stuff going on, so you can always find our old stuff at Twins Daily. It's located on iTunes and on our Libsyn website. So you can also view it at YouTube Live if you're doing that. Thank you. And I think that's all for housekeeping bits. Seth, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. So far, pretty decent Twins performance tonight. I got to be honest with you, and I tweeted this earlier today. I kind of hit me all of a sudden this afternoon or early this evening. It's been over a week now since we've had minor league box scores, and that kind of stinks because you just kind of get used to having so much more to look at.
Oh, I agree completely. I saw your tweet, and I'm pretty busy this time of the year, so I kind of don't follow it as close. But yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Usually when I get home, I'm checking stuff up, and it's not there to check up. And when you really, I mean, there's obviously the baseball, the pennant races that I look at, but even the fantasy baseball season's winding down, and there's just less really stuff to watch. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of the of a slower time, but I think things will pick back up here. Obviously not in the minor leagues, but you'll get your Arizona Fall League fix and then the winter ball stuff. So if you could just weather this storm, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I'll be all right. And you kind of mentioned the pennant races. I think I talked about it, or we talked about it last week when we were on Wednesday afternoon that I was heading to San Francisco for a conference out there for the weekend. And on Friday night, a group of us went out to eat at an Italian restaurant in downtown San Francisco. But on the drive there, we drove right by AT&T Park, and it was about 22 or quarter to 7 when we got there. So, it's 15, 20 minutes away from game time. It was Giants Dodgers, and the sea of people walking to the ballpark was awesome. I mean, I don't want to overstate that or oversell it, but at the same time, I mean, to see so many Giants jerseys, to hear the "Let's Go Giants," to see a couple of people in Dodgers jerseys kind of getting booed by the fans. Um, I miss that. It's been 4 or 5 years. 2010 was the last time the Twins were playing meaningful games at this time of the season. So it was kind of interesting being in a vehicle as just a ton of people were walking by, driving by, honking. It was crazy. So I do miss that. It definitely kind of got me going again.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that first year at Target Field when the Twins made the playoffs, the game that I was there, it was the second home game, um, and, and the crowd it was not playoff atmosphere. The year prior to that, the last year at the Dome, game 163 was probably more about what you're talking about, and that was even a cold, drizzly afternoon. But inside, I mean, you can tell when the playoff arrives, and it's different. Looking at Target Field tonight, there's not even an ounce of playoff atmosphere there. It is it's the dead zone pretty much.
And that's understandable. And also for me, it was like I said, 20 minutes before game time. Giants, Dodgers, both teams I think in the playoff. At least having good years, and but then again, I realize I've never really seen that kind of sea of people going to the stadium, but I'm one of those people that believes that if I'm going to pay money, I'm going to get into the stadium as soon as it opens. So I haven't really been outside in that line, 20, 25 minutes before game time trying to get in. So maybe that's part of it, but
Right.
I don't know. It was such a cool atmosphere that, although this isn't a Giants or a Dodgers, podcast, I thought it was kind of interesting just to kind of see that and kind of remember, what it's like as a fan when things are going well.
So did you think about getting a scalp ticket and jumping on in there?
I was thinking of just jumping out of the vehicle that I was in and saying, pick me up later, or I'll take the Bay Area Rapid Transit and try to find my way in the dark in San Francisco. But, I figured going with people and knowing that knew where they were and where they were going kind of trumped that.
I got you. The plan for tonight, we're probably going to roll for about 60 minutes. Um, Seth and I both, well, we didn't really get the assignment. We kind of assigned the assignment to come up with a minor league all-star team. And there wasn't a lot of rules, so we may have very different teams. I guess I kind of
Or
equate
the
this
exact
to
same team.
what's that? Or we'll have the exact same team?
Yeah, who knows? Probably.
Yeah, and I guess my thought was when a minor league announces um, their all-star team, there's always so many like question marks, like what were they thinking? And I don't know if they're trying to balance something with something else, but just through my eyes, how I'd fill out the all-star team, and through your eyes, how you'd fill out the all-star team. So we're gonna do some of that. Um, Seth's been asking some questions on Twitter tonight, so we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about that, and then hopefully we'll have some questions roll in, and we will answer those. So that's kind of the agenda for this evening, if you will. And you can always ask us questions during the show. There's the Q&A thing that's up on our event page on YouTube that you can find by going on Twins Daily. Uh, that you can ask, and we can read them and then select them, so you can even see them after the show if you want to get the answers. You can leave the questions on the show page on Twins Daily, and you can tweet us questions. So I think we have a handful of them right now, and we'll keep letting those roll in as the show progresses. So, do you want to get rolling right away with our minor league all-star teams?
Yeah, why don't we start with that? And it was your kind of plan, and what we're gonna do here tonight is go through a player at every position. Obviously, three outfielders. We are gonna pick a DH, which I guess, as Jeremy said, we didn't really give any rules, but I took that as probably the best hitter that you haven't mentioned at another position. We're gonna name a right-handed and left-handed starting pitcher, but also come up with a five-man rotation. So it should be a lot of fun. And again, we encourage people to go to the @Twins Hangouts Twitter page and follow that and leave us your thoughts. Leave your thoughts at Twins Daily because I think it's a pretty interesting topic.
For sure. Let's start just at the top of my list is catchers. How about yours?
It's at the bottom of mine, but I can find it.
All right, let's start with catcher. And this one for me um, was one guy or the other guy, and I hemmed and I hawed, and production for me, despite the fact that he was a little bit older for his league than the other guy, I took Mitch Garver over Stuart Turner as my all-star catcher for the Twins minor league season this year.
And I concur. So we're one for one in being the same. But I mean, for me, it my list was a little bit more about production, and I have this theory that as much as people want to talk about age related to level of competition, an overriding theme for me in my ranking is a player can only go against the players that the organization puts him at. In other words, Mitch Garver was at Cedar Rapids. All he could do was hit for Cedar Rapids. Stuart Turner was at Fort Myers. All he could do was hit for Fort Myers. And at the end of the day, I just think Garver put up just incredible numbers. For me, he was my choice in fact, a pretty easy choice for Twins minor league hitter of the year with the types of numbers that he put up this year.
Yeah, I mean I agree with that. He did start off hot, and then wasn't as hot at the end of the year. And Turner was started off cold and turned it on at the end of the year. Um, I guess I'm interested to see going forward how the Twins use these guys together, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. I don't know if it was last week or the week prior to that, but it'll be interesting just to see how these two guys, if they ever play at the same level, or if Turner continues to be a level above Garber as they progress through the system.
Yeah, and honestly, I think at least as it was this year, and it will be interesting to see how it progresses. I truly believe they just wanted both of them to play every day, or as a catcher does, probably 4 out of 5, or with Garver being able to be a little bit more of a hitter, he could DH more. I just think they wanted both of them to be in the lineup most of the time and get that opportunity to play. As they get older, as they move up, they'll probably fill in the roles, and I think they would be a good 1-2 punch at some point. However that plays out.
Let's move over to first base. Why don't you go first here?
To me, this was the toughest one for me. And we talked a little bit pre-show that I had one barely over the other, and I think the one that I had in second place, so to speak, was the one that I think is a little bit better of a prospect. At first base, I went with Mike Gonzalez. He spent the year at New Britain, where he hit just 271, but was on base 35% of the time. He had 29 doubles and 12 home runs, drove in 71 RBIs. And just to kind of throw the numbers for the other one out there, Dalton Hicks was close. He hit just 262, got on base 34% of the time, and had 24 doubles, 11 home runs, and 76 RBIs. So very similar years. I think Hicks is slightly better a prospect, but Mike Gonzalez has some serious power, and I guess I went with him. What did you do?
I went with Hicks. I wasn't sure the direction that I was going to go, um, but Hicks for me, didn't really repeat high A. He was there for a few dozen games last year, uh, and essentially replicated what he did last year. Batted 262 with a 750 OPS. Not great numbers, but in the grand scheme of what the Twins had. Um, didn't get a ton of production from first base in Rochester. Vargas would obviously been the choice if he wasn't in the major leagues, but we just said, nobody in the major leagues, and that really didn't. That left a couple guys, and I really did like Chad Christensen, but I look at him more as a utility guy um, that could fill different roles moving forward. So I went with Hicks there, and we have our first disagreement, but one that I think we can both live with.
I think we're both okay with that. You did mention that we did agree that no player that is in the major leagues right now, meaning September call up, or as you said, Vargas or Santana, who did spend some time in the majors, those guys would not be part of this list.
Right. Moving on to the second baseman, I kind of juggled stuff around. Um, I put Jorge Polanco at second, even though he played a lot of short. He also played some second, and it came down to, did I want Levi Michael on the team or not? And I decided I wanted to go with someone that played all year, and so I went with Polanco at second, and I'm pretty happy about that.
Well, I kind of actually went with where the guys played, and so I didn't go with Polanco there.
He did play second.
That said, well, he didn't play there very much. So, but I went a different direction, and the guy that I picked isn't necessarily a top prospect, but I would certainly put him in the prospect category still, because he's just 25 years old, which is pretty much the same age as guys that we're still fairly excited about. He's the same age almost. Actually, he's younger. No, just a couple months older than Josemiel Pinto. 9 months younger than or older than Aaron Hicks. He's basically the same age as Eduardo Escobar, and that's James Beresford. Not huge numbers, but he hit 276 in the full season at Rochester. He played 131 games, so he only missed a dozen games at the most, and had 28 doubles, 32 extra base hits, so not a home run hitter, but he is the guy that I picked because he played pretty much all the time at second base. I'm going to just go and check Jorge Polanco and find out how much time he played at shortstop this year. I'm sorry, how much time he played at second base this year.
Polanco played 10 games at second base, which would make him eligible as a second baseman on Yahoo Fantasy Baseball. Done.
All right, there's your category. I guess I chose to put Polanco somewhere else.
I know, and I had him there too, but I thought
the position he played.
Well, see, that's the thing. There's no rules.
Okay.
and that's why it worked. Okay, give me your third baseman.
This one I actually went back and forth on a little bit. I actually wrote down one name initially, and then I crossed it out and switched to the other one. And I ended up picking Brian Harr. I played 118 games, most of them in Cedar Rapids. Hit 264, 23 doubles, 5 triples, 14 home runs, 68 RBIs. Just had a solid all-around year. Not great, probably not what you'd consider a top prospect, but for me, I thought that was a good choice, although I could see there being some disagreement as well.
Yeah, I considered hard, but I actually went with a guy that played 92 games at third base. So I figured he could count as a third baseman. That was Nico Goodrum, and he didn't have a fantastic year, but some of the things that stuck out to me were his stolen bases, 35 stolen bases,
Mm-hmm.
109 hits, batted 250, which wasn't great, especially after getting off to a pretty hot start. Uh, but you add the speed in there. He was put at the bottom, really, of that Fort Myers lineup, and asked to play a new position. And he had a bunch of errors. He had 15 errors, so not terrible. But for me, I just thought, um, I considered Romero for a second, and at the end of the day, I thought if I can have one of these guys on my team, I'm going to take Nico Goodrum. So I did. So I took Nico Goodrum.
Right, right. Well, absolutely. I mean, by far, he's the best prospect in the group, and I guess you chose two, and it's like I said, at least we're having some disagreement here, so it makes for good discussion. Yours looks like it's a little bit more of a prospect ranking. Mine was more of a production during the year ranking, kind of an all-star. Uh, not an all-star prospect list, but an all-star production list. So, but Goodrum had a good year. The thing about him is he's generally been very good at, not hitting for average, but taking a lot of walks, getting on base at a good clip. The position change for him, I mean, it's something I know people in the organization have talked about for a year or two, eventually doing, and it really did happen this year. That's a lot to throw on him. We'll probably be talking a lot about Goodrum throughout the offseason, especially as the Twins start thinking about 40-man roster decisions.
In my defense, the text message that I sent to you at 10:30 this morning said an MILB All-Star prospect team. In my defense.
Crap. All right. Well, then my
So,
list might be a little bit different, but
well, I mean,
oh
I,
well.
I, I told you before I erred on the side of prospects, and I guess the thing was when did I say this on the live show or did I say this before the show? When the minor league teams come out with their All-Star or when those All-Star games come out, those teams there's always questions. So um,
Yep.
I think if we just would have looked at stats for certain positions, it's hard to argue with who had the best stats. So I don't think either of us went that way. You aired more on the side of production, and I aired more on the side of prospects. So I don't know. Let's see what happens when we move over to the six hole and name a shortstop. Because I already named your
All
shortstop.
right. Yeah, you already named my shortstop, and it was Jorge Polanco. Again, if we were solely production, I think you'd still pick Polanco over Doug Bernier, who obviously did very well at Rochester when he played short, though he played at all kinds of places. Um, you know, at New Britain, they really didn't have kind of an everyday guy. And in Cedar Rapids, I mean, Angel Vilma is probably the best defensive shortstop without question. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty easy choice to take Polanco short.
Yeah, and for me it was I had Polanco, and then I wrote Levi Michael and Angel Vilma. And I thought, okay, do I want the guy that had a little bit better stats, that didn't play all year because he was hurt, but really enhanced his prospect ranking in Levi Michael? Or did I want the guy that really played a great shortstop? And I went with the guy that played the shortstop. So I wanted to fit Polanco and Vilma on my team. So Polanco gets moved to second where he belongs, and Vilma is my all-star shortstop. Not that he had great production, um, as far as with the bat, he's got to get a lot stronger. But putting defense into it, that's the guy that I wanted, and I feel pretty good about my infield with potentially three shortstops in it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want defense, yours is definitely best. Like I said, Vilma's the best.
The best, just the best. Did we lose Seth? We may have lost Seth. Um, as he was talking, Angel Vilma is the best defensive prospect in the organization. His stats this year, if I can get those on my screen quick, um, you'd think I'd be able to type, but um, his stats this year, as we try to get Seth back into the conversation, he was played 105 games at shortstop for the Colonels and batted 266, had 17 errors at short, one at second, only one home run with an OPS of 636, on base percentage 313, slugging 323. So not a lot of power, but got on. I didn't get on base a ton. Walked 28 times in 112 games. We're gonna work on getting Seth back and see what happens here. We will shortly go over our outfielders. We have three outfielders and a DH left to put on our team, as well as our five starting pitchers and two relief pitchers for seven total. The only stipulation there is that we had one right-hander and one left-hander on the team. So um, I'll give you my outfielders, and then I'll repeat them when Seth gets back on. For me, there was really four guys that I considered, five guys that I considered. Um, I went with Adam Walker as my first outfielder. Um, obviously his production was pretty stellar throughout the year. Prospect wise, there's some debate where he fits. Um, because there's the big ability to strike out. Secondly, I put Jason Kanzler, who started the year in extended spring, moved up to Cedar Rapids, and then helped the Miracle win the Florida State League championship. Production got better as he moved up, as well as his defense is just Gold Glove caliber. Um, trying to add Seth to the video, and he sends me a text that says he is not allowed in the call. So we're going to re-invite him and see what happens. Not in all caps. Um, my third outfielder, I went with Max Murphy because, of course, I would have Max Murphy in my outfield. Um, the two I considered that I left off were Danny Ortiz and Ronaldo Rodriguez. Um, I'll give you a little update on what's going on in the Twins game. As far as I know, Kenny Vargas is a double short of the cycle, and Ricky Nolasco gave way to Glenn Perkins in the ninth inning. And Perkins, attempting to save a game, has had a rough week. Nolasco had 8 pretty stellar shutout innings. So Seth is getting the same message. Let's see what we can do here. And go from there. Um, you know, Nolasco pitched really well this week or today, Tuesday night, and that backs up a very good performance from Phil Hughes where he got over 10 strikeouts for the first time in nearly, I think it was 400 games. And then the Twins backed that up immediately with a Trevor May start that also got 10 strikeouts. So that's been three pretty good outings in the last, handful of days. If you're just joining us, we're trying to get Seth back into the call. Um, Something happened and he was not talking anymore. And then when we try to get him back in, it says he's not allowed. So bear with us here. We are going through our minor league all-star team. And so far, my team has been Garver at catcher, Hicks at first, Polanco at second, Goodrum at third, Angel Vilma at short. Seth's team, if I recall this correctly, was Garver, Mike Gonzalez. At second base was James Beresford. Shortstop was Jorge Polanco. And at third, he went with Brian Haar. So we're going to try to get him back here so he can share his outfielders with us. But we are just not able to get him into. Oh, I don't get. I didn't get it. Huh. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to call the guy, put him on speakerphone, because that will work. It's like the radio.
Hello.
Okay, you're just going to be on speakerphone. We'll do it that way.
All right.
What happened there? Did you get the old Canada internet connection that went out on us again, or what?
No, I didn't. It just all of a sudden went quiet, and then the next thing I knew, it had this little screen on there, and it says, "You're not allowed to join this video call." And every time you tried to call me since then, I've gotten the same message. So I don't know what happened.
That's messed up.
Yeah, it's weird.
The fans maybe have spoken.
Yeah, I'm gonna say nobody wants to listen to me anymore.
Well, nobody wants to listen to me either. So what the heck? Um, that is really weird. I don't know what could possibly have gone wrong. You were talking, and what happened was you said Angel Vilma is the best.
Well, I remember being all, almost confident, with your team. I think Angel Villalma is the best defensive shortstop of the group. I think Polanco is a terrific second baseman, not a very good shortstop. And I also think that, Goodrum, I still think is a better shortstop than Polanco, and eventually he'll become a good third baseman. So I was kind of saying, okay, you've got that strong defensive potentially infield, and I've got Mike Gonzalez and James Beresford, Jorge Polanco, and Brian Haar, who probably together aren't as good of a defensive infield, but my guys will out hit your guys this year.
Maybe they will. And you know what? We will never actually know how these teams would hit as teams.
That's very true.
While you were away, I shared my outfield.
All right. Well, because I don't know who you said.
Right.
So why don't I'll put my three, and then let you critique it.
Do it.
All right. So the first one I put was Adam Walker. You can talk about whatever you want, the strikeouts, the walk rate, which, by the way, increased quite a bit this year, I think up to 8%, which isn't great, but certainly, is getting closer to that 10%, which would be very good. But when you've got 24 home runs and 94 RBIs in a season, you're going to get noticed. And to me, Adam Walker is definitely one of the three. One, do we agree?
Yep, that was my number one guy.
All right. Number two, I went with Travis Harrison. He was really streaky throughout the year. He was really hot for about 30 games, and then he'd be, 0 for 28 a couple of times. And, at the end of the year, his numbers weren't tremendous, and he didn't have the home runs. It would have been certainly nice if he would have hit a few more home runs. I fully believe that the power is there for him to do that. He had, let me just check here, 33 walks, or 33 doubles and just 3 home runs. So, I think the power is there. And I'm kind of putting him in, kind of like you were saying earlier, he's more of a prospect than even what he did this year, at least in my opinion.
I did not have Harrison, so let's hear your third outfielder.
All right, my third one is, well, I'd be scared not to include this because I fear the mustache. And even though the mustache was removed, or not all of the mustache, but the wings were clipped from the mustache just yesterday, I had to put Jason Kansler in there. And it surprised me to actually look at his numbers. He had a 788 OPS, hit 282, got on base 34% of the time, had 11 doubles, 9 triples, and 12 home runs. And, overall, I thought he had just a real solid year. He stole 27 bases. So he was my third choice.
Kansler was actually my second choice. Would you care to put a wager on who my third choice was for outfielder?
Let's see. I know. Was he Robin Dale's own?
He was. He is.
I should have figured that.
Max Murphy.
Max Murphy?
You really,
I knew you were going to go with that direction.
So I think the offense is tipped back into my scale, my team, because I have Max Murphy and you don't.
All right, I'll take my chances with Travis Harrison.
All right, now let's talk DH.
Well, we talked about this a little before, too, and although he definitely doesn't necessarily fit into the category of prospect, I just think Reynaldo Rodriguez had such a good year offensively again, in New Britain. I think he had the second highest OPS, maybe the third highest OPS of anyone that played more than, say, 60 games in the minor leagues this year. But he had 37 doubles, 22 home runs, 70 RBIs, hit 278. Kind of a force in the middle of that New Britain lineup. So, although he's 27, really is probably, again, more of a DH, first baseman who this year played the outfield. I just couldn't ignore the numbers that he put up this year.
Yeah, I really thought about him in the outfield. The guy that I wanted to get on my team, and I considered him at first base. And then I thought, you know what, he could be in the first base area, he could be in the outfield area. The guy that I went with, and he's more of my Baseball America, they do like, instead of a DH, they go with a utility guy. So I named him my DH, but he's more my utility player. And that is Cedar Rapids first base slash left fielder slash right fielder slash can play anything, Chad Christensen. And batted .272 on the year with a 744 OPS, stole 30 bases, had 9 home runs, 24 doubles. He's the type of guy that maybe doesn't have the one position, but I think in this organization that values versatility so much, the Twins are gonna probably move him up next year and let him keep finding a spot to play. And I don't know where that spot will be next year, whether that's first base or in the outfield or third base or wherever, because he, coming into the year, played most of his games at third base. So after playing 27 games at third base last year, out of 47 total, didn't play a single game at third base this year. So it's just one of those deals that he only DH'd 4 times, but he was valuable in the field. So I'm going to name Chad Christensen my designated hitter. He's no slouch.
And if you would have put utility player, maybe I would have put him. He had good numbers this year offensively. He was hitting anywhere from second to fifth in that Cedar Rapids lineup. I sometimes wonder if he wasn't from Cedar Rapids, actually, born and raised, went to high school in Cedar Rapids, would they have moved him up at some point? In other words, did they keep him around there kind of as the hometown guy, or was he kept down there, because they thought he should stay there? And obviously, we'll never know. I mean, we're not going to find that kind of information out, but he's the kind of guy, in my opinion, that makes the trips that I've made to Cedar Rapids or Beloit or spring training kind of worthwhile, because he's a four-year college senior, which a lot of people will find that to be kind of a knock on a player in some cases. So he's a little bit older, but when you see him up close and in person, and you see that he is, I mean, what is he, 6'3"? He's probably 200 pounds or something like that. And he runs like the wind. I mean, it's amazing. He's played a lot of third base and first base, but I think he can play. Center field might be his best position, which I think says a lot. I'm a big Christensen guy. I don't think he's going to be, say, a top 30 prospect for sure, but probably not even maybe a top 50 prospect. But he's the kind of guy that I think can go up, stay a level a year, maybe even a little bit quicker than that, and be a guy who is a utility type player in the big league. I think that's maybe overstating it a little bit, but I don't think it's unrealistic to say he can't be that type of guy who comes up at 27 and plays for a few years in that utility type of role.
Yeah, he's listed on Baseball Reference at 6'3", 210 pounds. So he's a big dude. He's almost the type of guy that you would maybe look at and think he could be a safety or a not a tight end in today's day and age, but he's almost got like a football player body. If you're looking at like a safety or those type of guys. So the size-speed combination is always an intriguing thing, and to think that he played at first base, it's very interesting. Would you feel, I mean, this comparison's, it's weird, but like body, strength-wise, maybe he's got more speed, but athletic like Max Kepler?
There are a lot of similarities physically to them. Really, I think that's a good comp. Clearly Kepler's 3 years younger. I think Kepler has the potential to get bigger and probably become more of a power guy and Christensen, I think, would be able to maintain his speed longer. But I think if you're just looking at side by side, Kepler's probably an inch taller and maybe 5 pounds heavier. But they're just a lot of similarities.
Just from an athletic standpoint, I mean, probably guys that could be successful, probably the types of dudes that you would take to the bowling alley and they would just amaze you with their, hand-eye coordination and their ability to play other sports. I would guess that they're probably both pretty successful in other sports, kind of like our talking to Zach Larson when we talked to him.
Right. No, I mean, and Larson fits into that same category too. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to our pitchers. We're going to end up talking the whole time about this and not get to the other topics that we wanted to talk about. But let's do our starting pitchers. Why don't you fire off the right-handed starting pitcher, because I'm guessing I have the same one.
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy. It was my choice for minor league starting pitcher of the year. My assumption is he'll be the starting pitcher of the year, or the pitcher of the year for the Twins. And Baseball America had him as a second team all minor league this year. That's J.O. Berrios. And we've talked about him so much, I don't know that we necessarily even need to elaborate.
No, I would agree. He's the guy. Had the best season of any minor leaguer for the Twins this year, and finished in AAA with a not great performance. But if you would have been told he would play in a decisive game for the Rochester Red Wings before the end of the year, I think we all would have thought that's pretty crazy. He must have been awesome. So let's move on there and take our left-hand starting pitcher.
I mean, again, for me, it's a pretty easy choice. And it was my minor league pitcher of the year a year ago, and that's Taylor Rogers. You take away his first 5 starts of the year at Double-A, which is a big jump for anyone, and you find out what a guy is made of, the way he turned around. And his overall numbers don't necessarily look great. I think his ERA was 3.3, which is very good. But if you consider what he did the last 19, 20 starts of the year, to me, that was an easy choice. And I'm sure you've read it, but I know that Phil Miller in the most recent Baseball America talked to Mike Radcliffe about him and talked to other scouts about him. And they think that he is going to get to the big leagues quick and has a chance to be very successful. And one thing I read in that Miller article was Radcliffe saying that he's been hitting 95. So hitting 95, left-handed, good slider. I mean, that's the kind of guy that could be one of those guys that pops up as a top prospect, or maybe never becomes a top prospect and becomes one of those guys that's a very good major league starter.
Right. I think the comment that was made in that article was that there are some scouts that believe he's our best starting pitcher, our best starting pitching prospect. So, I mean, that speaks volumes about how teams feel about him. If you are not watching the Twins game and you're with us live, you are making a mistake. It's pretty interesting right now. When you were off air, I talked a little bit about Ricky Nolasco's start and how Perkins was coming in to save the game. Perkins didn't get it done, but the game is still going on. So if you're with us live, turn it on. If you've
muted the game
and are listening to us now, if you are listening to us in the future, you'll know exactly what point of the game this was if you were watching it live.
And we love closers.
Proven closers because they're just so darn effective. All right, so we have 3 other starting pitchers to name to our squad. I'm going to go out on a pretty wide branch here and say that you took really, really productive non-prospect starters.
Well, I mean, I like to think that they're still prospects because, that's why we do what we do, is because guys like Taylor Rogers, we've been talking about him for a couple of years, even though he's not even in most people's top 20s. And that's why I think it's important to give credit where the credit's due, because sometimes those guys turn into better major leaguers than the guys we talk about all the time.
Right. And I guess when I say non-prospects, I'm talking non-top prospects, guys that didn't show up in Baseball America's top 30.
Probably.
Okay. I'm going to go with my guy that I've been trying to pimp hard for a while. And nobody even cared to listen until Terry Ryan talks about him in one press conference, and then Mike Berardino tweets about how good he's been recently. And I was like, hey, Mike, you're late to the party. I've been doing this for months. And his response was, it means more coming out of the DM's mouth. So, while he's right, I take Tyler Duffy. And I take him because he apparently developed a changeup that has made him go from likely 6th or 7th inning bullpen guy to potential a ceiling of a mid-rotation guy. And he started the year at Fort Myers and was pretty good there, only started 4 times. Then moved up to New Britain, and in the second half of the year really just kind of kicked into the gear and won 8 games and struck out more guys, and then moved up to Rochester where he won 2 games and in 16 innings struck out 16 guys. So he struck out more guys as he went up the ladder and finished the year with a record of 13-3, 113 strikeouts in 149 innings, an ERA of 3.67, and a 6.8 to 1.8 strikeouts to walks per 9. So he's my number 3 pitcher, and I feel pretty solid about Tyler Duffy.
Well, I didn't put him as number 3. In fact, I just have my final 3, kind of like I had my outfielders. There were 3 of them, so I didn't really rank them. But Tyler Duffy, for me, was definitely in there. He was my choice as number 4 starting pitcher of the year. And you really alluded to everything. I would agree. I would say that he made 25 starts on the year, which is really good down in the minor leagues. 149.2 innings. just under a hit an inning, which I think is pretty good. You mentioned the lack of walks. And for me, the biggest thing with him is that I agree that he got better as he moved up. And to me, that's really encouraging. Like you said, when he was drafted, he was a college part-time reliever with JT Charlevoix at Rice, and the assumption was that he would get to add some pitches and hopefully maybe become a back end of the rotation starter, but most likely a reliever. And who knows, that could still happen. But I just think to see that improvement through the course of the year and as he moved up is what was really encouraging to me. So again, that to me was a great choice.
My number 4, and we'll probably disagree on this one, but I took a guy who is very young for his class, young for where he was placed, made 19 starts, didn't have the win-loss record that you would like to see, but had an ERA of 2.59, had a WHIP of 1.13, only gave up 75 hits in 87 innings, and gave up 4 home runs. Didn't strike out many, but for a 19-year-old in low A, I'm taking Cole Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. He was very good when he was healthy this year. What he lacked in innings, he made up for by throwing strikes. And the opponent batting average against him, I don't have it, but I think it was in the low 200s. And all the reports that I heard about him were that any contact against him was weak contact. So to me, that's very encouraging. Again, that's overall production versus his prospect status. We've talked about it. His prospect status, I think, went up this year. I did not have him in my starting 5.
Okay, well, give me a guy that you did have in your starting 5.
Well, then I'll do that, and I'll say, a guy that also didn't have a lot of innings, but I think what he did when he got to Cedar Rapids was more impressive than probably most pitchers that either one of us have on this list, and that's Chi Wei-Hu. He started in extended spring training and went to Elizabeth. I think he only made 1 or 2 starts. Then he was just incredible. He went to Cedar Rapids, he went 82 overall, 2.15 ERA, 0.87 WHIP, 8.1 strikeouts per 9, and 1.9 walks per 9. So more strikeouts and less walks than Stewart, and 16 less overall innings. But I just think the way he dominated the level, I thought Hu was a guy that stepped up and really became from a suspect to a legit prospect. I mean, he's. I think we would both agree, and where I guess we'll find out as we start doing our rankings and learning a little bit more. But I think we can safely say he's a top 20 Twins prospect, if not even in the top 15.
Yeah, I think we actually were asked a while ago, and we both got into Twitter conversations the same evening, and I put him below Tyler Duffy, but I said somewhere in the 15 to 20 range, and I think you had said basically in that same area, but you put him ahead of Duffy. For me, it was between him and one other guy for the last spot, and both guys that were in very similar situations, coming up to Cedar Rapids when they probably weren't necessarily expected to come up. And I looked at Hu, and I just thought, you know what? I think it was 55 innings. Other guy had 71. The thing that really stuck out to me for the guy that I named was his strikeouts. And where Cole Stewart didn't have many, Lewis Thorpe had 80 in 71 innings. And we're talking about an 18-year-old who gave up less than a hit per inning, had a WHIP of 1.36, which was inflated by his walk numbers. He had 36 and 71, which is way too high. But when he settled down, he was fantastic in Cedar Rapids, and he only threw, I believe he made like 16 starts, and there were some games that he really battled with walks. But there was a game in late July where he struck out 10 and walked 1 in 5 2/3 of an inning. So he was the guy that I went with, and it was definitely debatable. But I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go with the guy that threw more innings than the guy that you went with, even though I think either one of them could have very easily been named to this All-Star team.
So you have a starting rotation of Berrios, Rogers, Duffy, Stewart, and Thorpe.
That's right.
And I have Berrios, let me make sure I say this right, Berrios, Rogers, Duffy, Chiwehu, and my last one was Jason Wheeler. And I put, not quite in that Duffy category, but I would put Wheeler as one of those guys that, like Duffy, started back at Fort Myers despite the fact that he was there last year. Spent a little while there, pretty much half the season there, made really good improvements, but then he moved up to Double-A, and his numbers actually got better, and he actually struck out more. Overall, he did make one start in Triple-A. I think he gave up 2 runs in 5 innings as well. So he didn't quite get to where Duffy got to at the end of the year, but overall, 11-9, 2.67 ERA, a whip of 1.19. And, for me, I'm impressed, and I know that, overall, it's much different comparing third-year guys in the minors to these guys like Thorpe and Stewart and Gonsalves, who are much younger and will be treated differently. But I'm always impressed when a guy like Wheeler this year had 158.1 innings, gave up less than a hit an inning, walked just 2.1 per 9, and still only struck out 6.5 per 9. But I think that number actually increased as he moved up to Double-A. So, I think Wheeler is one of those guys that maybe not to the level of Duffy, but I think he improved his quote-unquote stock over the course of this season.
Yeah, and I think Wheeler's going to be a guy that probably comes into next season kind of flying under the radar, hopefully, and can maybe improve his stock a little bit more. A guy that was notably absent from both of our lists was Alex Meyer. And how much did you consider putting him on your team?
Not very. When you look at, obviously when it comes to prospect status, he's probably in your top 5 or top 6 overall Twins prospects. He's probably in your top 3 pitching prospects. We're going to have, we talked about this many times too, Berrios, Stewart, and Meyer, and people are going to agree and disagree on the order of having those 3, but I think they're the clear top 3. Lewis Thorpe right after that, and as you said, I think Taylor Rogers comes in right below that. So from a prospect standpoint, clearly he's in the top 3, but I'm just alarmed by the increasing walks. The strikeouts were great. I love strikeouts. 130 innings, 153 strikeouts is great. 10.6 is, that leads the International League. So I guess the more and more, though, I worry about it. Can he be a starter? Will he be able to eat innings over the course of the season? He's still pretty young when you think about the big picture. He's tall, and that release point's always a concern. I just had a lot of people start telling me they're starting to worry a little bit about the fact that he may end up being, quote-unquote, just a very good relief pitcher.
Right.
And, I don't know if that's true. We'll see what happens next year. I did get a good report the other day. I asked somebody how Meyer was feeling, if there was any concern as he goes into his off-season, or if he's going to be limited to throwing or anything like that. And the response was quite simply and quite matter-of-factly, he's not hurt. So, I think that's good news. I think the news from his final start when he was removed is he just wasn't able to get loose, kind of like Berrios in the one start that he came out of early, just wasn't able to get loose. And so there's really no concern about Meyer. But, again, I've been rambling, but I didn't even really consider him in the top 5.
Hey, let me ask you a question. The three pitchers that you said will be the top 3 prospects, which I think we both agree on, I want you to put them in order how you feel right now, and then tell me if the gap is closer between 1 and 2 or 2 and 3.
Well, for me, it's Berrios, and then there's a gap. And then, I'd probably put Stewart 2 and Meyer 3, but I think the bigger gap is between 1 and 2.
Okay. Because I
What do
think,
you think?
well,
I don't know. I
but
kind of go day to day or person to person I talk to. I mean, talk to various people throughout the off season, and based on those types of reports, I could flip flop anytime.
right. Well, because I think before when I ranked him, I went Stewart, Berrios, and then Meyer. But now I would go Berrios, Stewart, and Meyer, which I mean to me says the bigger gap is between the first two and the third one. For me, if I'm willing to flip 1 and 2, the three's going to stay the same.
Yeah.
I mean that was my question. All right, let's do these relief pitchers. We each named 2 relief pitchers, and I have a sneaking suspicion that we probably have the same guys.
I think it's possible. Let me start with my first one, and I don't think anyone will be surprised, especially if you read Twins Daily last week, that I would pick Brandon Peterson. He was my choice for relief pitcher of the year. Just real briefly to go over his numbers, I think he started at Cedar Rapids and quickly moved up to Fort Myers. 1.56 ERA, 0.97 WHIP, walked 3.0 per 9 innings, and struck out 13.1. So he had 84 strikeouts to 19 walks and 57 and 2/3 innings. So, I mean, he's Burnsville native, went to Burnsville High School. He was the first high school player to hit a home run in Target Field. And as I wrote, his goal going forward will be to limit the number of home runs he gives up at Target Field going forward.
Yeah, I had Peterson as well. That was a pretty easy call. Hit us with the hit us.
Who's your second guy then?
Well, my second guy, also for me, was a pretty easy call, despite only being in the organization since the middle part of June. And that was a guy that threw 31 innings, struck out 39, only allowed 14 batters to reach, which makes his WHIP .452. With 1 earned run on the season, 8 saves, 3-0 record, and that was soon to be in Arizona, Jake Reed.
I mean, there's no arguing. He gave up, I think, 1 earned run or maybe 2 earned runs in those 31 innings as well. I actually didn't pick him. I went with Todd Van Steensel just because he was there the entire season, and also put up some pretty good numbers. I mean, Jake Reed's numbers are video game types of numbers, and he did it in 31 innings, which, considering he pitched a full season at Oregon ahead of that, is pretty impressive, And but I look at Todd Van Steensel, and he pitched 27 more innings, and he had an ERA of 1.39. He had a WHIP of 1.06. He walked 3.7, but he struck out 11.0 per 9 as well. So, I mean, it's kind of semantics in terms of what we picked. So I went with a guy that was there just a little bit longer, and that was Van Steensel. But I mean, I'm certainly not going to argue with Jake Reed being on a on a list for what he did in 2014.
It does surprise me a little bit that you didn't go with your homeboy Lester.
Well, he's on the big league team right now.
Oh, that's a good point. Shoot.
Yeah, he was ineligible.
Oh, I forgot because he pitched in the big league and then he has an ERA of like 265.
Oh yeah, but that doesn't count.
Hey, do you want to talk about what just happened on the tube tonight?
I think we should spend just a minute because we've been kind of watching it on mute, and it's kind of what we're getting used to as Twins fans. But the result at the end of it is a little different than we've been expecting.
Yeah, well, I mean, first we should talk about how important the stat is, and I'm talking about pitching wins. Okay. So what happened was Perkins comes in after Nolasco pitches 8 shutout innings and promptly gives up a hustle double to Hunter. I didn't see what happened next, maybe a single, and then a 3-run opposite field blast to JD Martinez. Blown save, on the hook for the loss. And then our old pal Joe Nathan comes in, twitchy, and I don't know, did someone got on, And then Suzuki hit one to center field, and center fielder decides he's going to try to catch the ball, only he didn't, and it rolled. And Doug Bernier, who was pinch running, scored, and that tied the game. And then our new friend, our new favorite, Aaron Hicks, walk off infield single. Everybody celebrates, and that's it. Tigers lose, which is fantastic. I hate the Tigers, and the Twins win, which is great.
I mean, Aaron Hicks was flying. When he hit that ball, and it was kind of about a three-hopper right up the middle. Yeah, I kind of instantly knew he had a chance because what we saw is just how fast he can run. Because he got down home to first incredibly fast. It really wasn't even all that close to the play. What a game. I mean, like you said, it does just, it's, again, another example of why the win stat is really meaningless, especially for relief pitchers. It's a good, thing about proven closers and such. You kind of wonder if Perkins is really healthy, if it's the neck, if it's, a sore arm, or what it is. But, yeah, I mean, there's so many different angles that we could talk about the Twins with. But now, right now, if you are watching FSN, they're talking to Kenny Vargas. Maybe the most exciting thing in the news for the night is he had both an infield single and a triple in the same game. His home run took about 0.43 seconds to get out of the field, and it was his 25th of the year, which means David Ortiz owes him a lot of jewelry.
It was his how many home run of the year?
25th.
In the combined.
Combined.
And he said if he got him if he had 25, he'd buy him a lot of jewelry.
Yep, he would bling him out. That's how David Ortiz told him at the beginning of the year.
That's fantastic. And his home run was one of those. It almost looked like one of those pitches that you can't do anything with, so you just try to foul it off. Only.
Well, yeah, he was way out in front of it.
Yeah, only he just hit a home run with it.
And I mean, frankly, aside from tonight, which he was 3 for 4 with the home run and the triple, and he's had a couple home runs over the last few weeks. He's been pretty terrible the last 3 weeks or so.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's either strikeout or home run. I mean, he's been pretty bad. So I mean, but what that shows is that even when he's not hitting, he is always a threat to hit a home run, which is a good thing. And imagine when he starts making his adjustment back to the pitchers. I mean, he can take mistakes, and he can be off balance, and he can hit it a long way. It kind of speaks, and I posted this on Twitter tonight early, that I mean, if you look at the ages of some of the Twins' young players, let me see. José Pinto is 25. Aaron Hicks is just about 25. He'll play 25 in less than a month. Danny Santana and Kenny Vargas are both 24. Oswaldo Arcia, who, by the way, has 32 Major League home runs and a 747 OPS, which is 5% better than the average hitter in Major League Baseball, he's still just 23 until next May. So I think, it's kind of the same thing that I just said with Vargas, with Arcia, too. As much as he's struggled to put the ball in play, or he's struggled with left-handers, he's been pretty okay. He's definitely not someone you want to give up on, and then you realize just how young he is, and it just makes it all even a little bit better. So it's been a frustrating year, but there are some things that Twins fans should be a little bit excited about.
Hey, are you going to be content with opening day roster next year? Opening day lineup, Joe Mauer batting third, playing first, Kenny Vargas batting fourth, DHing, Ozzie Arcia batting fifth in right field. Are you happy? Are you content with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, especially because Brian Dozier will probably be batting second, and Santana will probably be batting first. And I mean, that's a pretty decent top five. I mean, some guys you're kind of projecting aren't going to have a sophomore slump or are going to make some improvements. Obviously, we're hoping Joe Mauer is a little better and returns to Joe Mauer form next year, and Vargas takes a step. But I mean, you're making some assumptions there, but it's something that I think we can be pretty excited about, especially the Trevor Plouffe can be back. I mean, there's a lot there.
Okay. I think this leads us to our first question. I believe we have 4 of them to answer. The first question comes from Bill Peterson, who asks us on our event page, should the Twins pursue a free agent pitcher, outfielder, both or neither in the offseason?
Well, I mean, let me say this about the pitching. The pitching is the problem this year, and the pitching is what needs to most be addressed. But I don't think I would go out and get anyone. I would generally speaking stay away from the $100 million guys, and there's a couple of those. There's just so much risk in there, and you have to be right on those. And then if you go to those middle tier, the guys like Nolasco, like Hughes, I mean, obviously to this point they have picked wrong on Nolasco, though he's been really pretty decent in like 4 of his last 5 starts. But they were definitely right on Phil Hughes. But you know, a lot of those guys in that middle tier, I mean, it's just you're throwing your hands up and just kind of hoping, because most of them, I mean, if you look at those guys in that say 10, anywhere from say 5 to 10 or $12 million per year types of deals for anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's almost a crapshoot of which ones are going to be good and which ones are going to get hurt or which ones are going to be terrible. So I think with the young guys that they've got, I'd take my chances with May, with Meyer, you know, maybe even with Logan Darnell as your 6th or 7th starter sitting in Rochester. You're going to have Nolasco, Hughes, Gibson, and I think May is probably going to be, those 4 will be Gibbons. I wouldn't go after pitching. Field-wise, sure, if you want to throw in somebody, but I want Archie playing every day. I want Santana somewhere, whether it's short or in the outfield. I want Hicks playing, and if they want to pick up, you know, a 4th outfielder type who you know is going to be fine with going to the 4th outfielder spot when Buxton's ready or whenever something's, I guess I would have less problem with going after a middle-of-the-road outfielder than a middle-of-the-road starter.
Yeah, you know, for me, just looking at the list of pitchers, there's a couple of guys, actually, like you said, you're not going to go and get one of the top end guys. Um, if Justin Masterson would sign on a, you know, on a deal, and I don't think even a Phil Hughes type deal, but on a maybe shorter deal for more money. You know, maybe it's a 1 year make good deal. I wouldn't mind throwing some money at Masterson to see if he can figure it out. But
Well, see, and that would be a medium risk because he's still the kind of guy that's going to get some money. But he has a high reward. You know, I think there is a high reward there. I mean, he is what we hope that Kyle Gibson becomes.
right, absolutely. So a guy like Masterson, a guy like Brandon McCarthy, I don't know where he'll file in this thing, but both guys are 31. Um, is that right? Masterson's 30, McCarthy's 31. Those are the types of guys that I wouldn't mind the team going after. Um, you know, but I also wouldn't complain if, and I don't think Johnny Cueto is going to hit free agency. I think there's an option on his contract. But if the Twins went after a guy like that and spent a ton of money, I'm not going to complain about that because I wouldn't mind seeing Johnny Cueto pitch for the next 5 years.
Well, and I agree. I'd be excited about that in the same way I was really excited about them signing Ricky Nolasco.
You'd be way more excited about Johnny Cueto.
I'd be much, yeah, I would, because he's like, what, 3 or 4 years, maybe even, yeah, probably 4 years younger.
And 4 times as good. Right.
But at the same time, there's 4 times more risk there, probably, too. And,
Right.
I mean, again, I'd be very excited if that happened. I'd also be very surprised, and I won't be disappointed if it doesn't.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, it's Lester, Shields, Scherzer, Cueto. I mean, those types of guys. You hope the Twins go after them. You just don't expect them to, and you won't be disappointed when they don't. Um, you know, I don't know. There'll always be guys hitting the market from Cuba. At some point, I'd like to see the Twins at least appear to be in the market for one of those guys. I mean, Jose Abreu, how good has he been? It's been ridiculous. And to think that he signed for, it wasn't even $70 million, was it?
6 years, I think 68 million.
Yeah. that is an absolute steal. But Cuban guys are going to keep getting more money because it appears that they, you know, are all steals. So I wouldn't mind them going that market. Looking at the list of outfielders, I think Schaefer, if he's around, he's a fourth outfielder. Um,
Hmm.
what the Twins need
I'd agree.
is a
But
left.
I'd have no problem.
Is
No
a,
problem with them bringing back Schaefer. He's
right,
not going to get much of a raise from this year. In fact, he may even get a little bit less. But
right.
I think that.
But I mean, what they need is a left fielder. And did Hicks play left? Hicks played right tonight.
He played right tonight, but he's played all three quite a bit since he's been back.
And I could see Hicks playing left. Um, Torrey Hunter's obviously a free agent. He's getting old. I don't know if he would have any desire to come back and not play every day. But I mean, I would endorse that decision. I mean, that's probably more of a what he meant to the Twins when he was younger than well, this is a really good decision to bring him in. But I think as far as having him for Hicks would probably be good. Having him for Buxton eventually would be good.
I believe in his leadership skills, and that's what they would be bringing him in for.
Right, and I think that where the Twins are, that wouldn't be terrible. Have a guy that's won a lot, and have a veteran presence. And I still believe that Torrey Hunter would be good in target field as a right-handed hitter. Granted, he will be, where's his age here? He will be 30. He'll be 40.
40, only.
Holy jeepers, he'll be 40 next year. But
And I think he'll stick in Detroit. But hey, how about this for former Twins outfield news? This just in: we watched the Nationals clinch the playoff spot. Aaron Gleeman just tweeted during the Nationals division-winning celebration, Denard fan said, "quote unquote," "I feel like I was held back in Minnesota. I'm thankful to be here."
yeah, well, that's too bad. It's too bad because Denard Span handled adversity very well when Bryce Harper said he shouldn't start. And he should have handled this differently. How was he held back in Minnesota? That's what I would like to know.
He was not held back in Minnesota.
So he would have been best off not saying anything.
Yeah, I don't know what he was asked, and I don't know who asked him or why they asked him, whatever it was. But I just think that's ridiculous.
The only
he kept getting picked off all the time, so it's not like Gardy stopped him from stealing. He hit when he hits, and frankly, his best 2 years of his career were by far his first 2 years. Since then, his on-base percentage, which is really the most important thing for a leadoff hitter, has been about 330 or less. So I don't really think that the Twins hurt him in any way.
If you want to make an argument that he was held back by the Twins, you could potentially say that the year that they traded for Gomez and Gomez was named the starter and Span wasn't, that he was held back for those whatever months when he went to Rochester.
Was it like 6 games or something?
That's the only argument that you have.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of an argument. I think it's kind of ridiculous.
You know what? I'm glad that he's been playing well in the second half.
Yep.
I mean, he's batting .299. His on base right now is 353, which is the highest it's been since 2009.
Mm-hmm.
His OPS is 767, which is as high as it's been since 2009. He's stolen 31 bases, which is a career high. And he's hit 5 home runs, which is the most since 2009.
Right.
Whatever, dude. That's what I say.
I think Span's a good guy. I really do. I mean, the little bit that I've ever talked to him, and he's been on podcasts before, things like that. But I just think that's a heat of the moment kind of thing that he probably said something, and he really, if he thought about it, he would probably like to take it back.
Right. Well, in this case, I hope I hope even more now that Alex Meyer's a stud. Just so it's like, hey, we got Alex Meyer for Denard Span.
Yep.
That's what I'm hoping. Question from Lightfoot789. With the long list of power prospects in the system, will the production outweigh the droughts considering so many have strikeout issues? Then he lists Arcia, Sano, Vargas, Plouffe, Parmalee, Dozier, uh, Pinto, Buxton, etc. Can you win this way? He has a note that he believes that the Yankees had the best record in 2011 while registering 220 home runs and tons of strikeouts. Can the Twins win this way?
If they have 220 some home runs, they probably could. But obviously, one pitching is going to matter more.
Right.
And improving their pitching is going to be the biggest key. Secondly, I don't think it's a sustainable thing. I mean, unless you're also walking along with that, and Arcia and Vargas don't walk. I think Sano's the kind that will walk. Dozier's walked this year. Plouffe, not a ton of walks. I don't think that's a sustainable thing. Again, especially with the younger guys, Dozier's going into his, I guess next year will be his fourth season. I guess probably his, third full season next year. You would hope that the at-bats that he got this year and last year, he'll make some improvements. Arcia, Vargas, you hope that the struggles that they've gone through at times this year will lead to some improvements. I mean, that's part of what the Twins have to do is they went into this rebuild saying, we're not, I asked Terry Ryan right when he retook the job, and he said, yeah, we're not going to take any shortcuts. Their decision has been, we're going to go young, and we're going to build this organization back up, and we're starting to see some of those guys. But when you make that decision, you're also making that assumption that guys are going to continue to improve and get better from year to year. And if they don't get better and keep striking out without walking and striking out the rates at which they're striking out, it's not going to be good.
Right. Question from Brian Verdal. Assuming both are healthy, what kind of timetable do you see Buxton and Sano to the Twins next year?
Well, I think, and we talked about this a lot last offseason, I think that we both thought Sano would probably be up, in early June, kind of after that Rule 5, after the arbitration Super 2 number day, or earlier. And I think we thought that Buxton would be up. And we talked about, playing in the futures game and then just staying. So mid-July, maybe early August at the latest for Buxton. I would say both of those timelines right now are pushed back 1 year. And I would say even a little bit more than that because they're going to want Sano. He's going to miss, both of them pretty much have missed a full year worth of at-bats. And you have to see how they come back. Is there any rust that they need to shake off? So I think unless there's an injury, I think Sano would probably be more in that mid-July time next year, and I think Buxton could be at best about that same timeline. I would expect him to be a September call-up next year.
The thing is, one injury can change anything, whether that's to Plouffe or to Sano or to Buxton or to whoever. So
Correct.
they'll both. I feel pretty confident they'll both debut next year. Sano will debut first, but I don't see it happening before the draft, which is the second week of June. But you know what? I've been wrong a number of times when it comes to the Twins because I apparently don't get it. So that's a good question and definitely one that we'll probably spend way too much time talking about this winter. Question from Tim Murray. What I don't have it up right now, but he asks about New Britain. If you're not aware, the Twins have severed ties with New Britain and are one of 4 teams. I don't know the teams off the top of my head, but 4 teams, 1 in the Eastern League, 3 in the Southern League, that are quote unquote free agents. What you look in your crystal ball? What do you see happening?
I would like to see the Twins make a move. I'm not fully on board with them moving, but I think there's a very good chance. In fact, I think better than 50-50 chance. And I know Andrew Walter's not going to like hear that. I think there's a better than 50-50 chance that they do move. I do think if New Britain would have had obviously they're moving to Hartford in 2016, so 1 year into whatever the next PDC is, player development contract. Uh, they haven't really finalized all of that, and I think if there was some more certainty there, I mean, I think the Twins may have re-upped there, but there's a lot of question marks. I don't know. There's just a lot of weird stuff about the New Britain relationship as well. Um, as far as whether they'll end up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Mobile, Alabama, I mean, I don't know. I do think, and it may have been you that mentioned this, and I did put it on Twitter, that it'd be kind of neat for the territory train to go to a few double A game or two in Chattanooga, and then see how far they'll live Beston and two spots over a long weekend or something like that. It'd be kind of interesting to see that happen. But I don't know. I kind of like the New Britain. The benefits of New Britain is it's real close to Rochester, and they're able to probably get to Rochester or back and forth relatively quickly. But there's trains. They can get to wherever they need to pretty quickly if need be. Mobile, Chattanooga, those would probably be quicker flights than from Fort Myers. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they're in the east half of the country. We really haven't. Cedar Rapids was a change last year, but Fort Myers has been around for 22 years with the Twins. New Britain's probably been 20 some years. Rochester's been more than a decade now too. So yeah, do they need a change? Not necessarily. Is it a good relationship with New Britain? I'm not convinced of that. I haven't been convinced of that. I was surprised they re-upped with them 2 years ago. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Right. The thing is, when it comes to these minor league deals, it's essentially a game of musical chairs, but there's a chair for everybody. And at this point, the chair the Twins are sitting in is the worst chair. So standing up isn't really going to affect you that much, because if someone sits in your chair, you probably get a better chair. And I mean, that the stadium issue is a huge deal. And I don't know, I mean, the ins and outs of all those other teams, but if the worst case scenario is the Twins end back up in New Britain, why would you sign on for that if you had an opportunity to go somewhere else?
Right.
So.
Right, and what are those other cities willing to do? What are those other organizations willing to do? I mean, not that you're trying to take advantage, but you are trying to put your players and your development of those players in the good situations.
Exactly. We have one more question. I think that was 4, but then I found another one in my mentions. From John Williams. Who are some of the top prospects for next year's draft? Excellent question. And Kylie McDaniel, who is recently moved over to Fangraphs, wrote an article, and I'm not going to have time to find that and pull that up, but he essentially said there's a top 3, and the Twins aren't in it. And the 3 were a shortstop from Florida, high school shortstop Brendan Rodgers, Brady Aiken, obviously, who's going to do some JUCO, and then a pitcher from Duke, a big dude, and I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce his last name. I think it's Mike Matula. Those are the 3. And then you have a bunch of other guys. Philip Bickford, who's leaving college to go to a JUCO to be draft eligible. He's in the second tier. Alex Bregman, who is at LSU. He's currently a shortstop, but probably is a second baseman professionally. He's in that next tier. Mike Cameron's kid, Daz Cameron, who's very Byron Buxton-ish, is in that next tier. And then you have a bunch of other guys that are high school pitchers and college pitchers that could, change at any given day. A guy that's really seen his stock go up lately is a lefty from San Clemente High School in California by the name of Colby Allard. And he's a guy that could probably make a jump like Aiken made last year. And we could, be discussing another high school pitcher from California going first overall. So at this point, the Twins have the 4th worst record, but because of the Astros being locked in number 2, would get the 5th pick. And I haven't looked at the roster or at the standings lately, but I think they are relatively close with the Diamondbacks and play a series with the Diamondbacks next week. So um, they're going to draft in that 4, 5, 6 range, and we'll go from there. But so much can change between now and June.
That's my point. I'm glad you're around to answer those types of questions again because, frankly, I won't pay any attention to that until like March or April or maybe even May of next year because, like you said, you can have your favorites now. I mean, we know about Aiken, obviously, because he was drafted this year. We know about, was it Bickford?
Yep.
It's on the right.
Yep, Phil Bickford.
I mean, and then there's these other guys who have been prospects since they were like 14 that continue to show up on these lists. And at the end of the day, if you're picking fourth, if you're picking sixth, some people, like probably 2 or 3 guys, are going to kind of come out of the, early second round of their supplemental projections and become a top 10 guy. And some of the guys from the top 10 are going to just fall or get hurt or that kind of stuff. So I will probably pay about zero attention to any of that stuff until April, and I'll count on Jeremy to answer all those questions.
Let's close this show up. We've went longer than we anticipated. Obviously, the news of the week, and it wasn't necessarily Twins news, but the news of the week in Twins territory obviously had to do with Adrian Peterson. And Friday afternoon, the news broke that he was being indicted for some child abuse, things that were brought to the attention of some authorities, I believe, in Houston. Some pictures surfaced of a 4-year-old, and there were a number of marks. And as it appears, Adrian Peterson, while trying to discipline his child, hit him repeatedly with a leafless tree branch while the leaves were stuffed in the kid's mouth. Is essentially what I've heard. The Vikings immediately made the correct decision in deactivating Peterson, who flew then to Texas to surrender to authorities, post bail, and come back to the cities where he was not, to my knowledge, on the sideline with the team. As the story goes, the Vikings got run off the field by the Patriots, and ownership apparently made the call that Adrian Peterson's going to play next week. Threw their coach and general manager under the bus, talking to the press, and it's become a storm of you-know-what, media-wise, with people pulling sponsorships, governors speaking out. I would assume there'll be groups picketing at different places. Due process exists for a reason, and I get that. Seth and I talked earlier off air about how this is relates to other parts of our life, and you can kind of tell the personal connection that you had with this story, where it connected with you before, and we can continue talking just for a few minutes about the Adrian Peterson saga.
Well, and I think it's important to discuss this even on our show, even though we are going a bit long, because it is something that everyone is thinking about in one way or another. I don't want to get into the whole, what is proper discipline and what is not. I know that what we heard and read and saw that Adrian Peterson did to his 4-year-old is not, it's not okay. As a parent, you and I are both parents, and we both probably believe strongly in discipline and teaching your kids correctly, but I was impressed so much by what Chris Carter said in saying that, what happened to us, what happened to, previous generations, you learn from, and you don't make the same mistakes. Your parents are great, and they maybe mean well, but they didn't make all right decisions either. The connection for me on this, and it's something that I think is important for parents who are maybe listening to this, and this is just my opinion, so obviously it is what it is. I'm not some psychologist or some expert on anything, but for me, I bring this back to the Kirby Puckett situation. Obviously, I was 8 years old when Kirby Puckett debuted with the Twins in 1984. I remember in 1985, I think he had his first home run, and my mom told me before I went to school, and I was so excited because it was a late game or whatever. I'm 91. Kirby Puckett was the man. He was a guy that I considered a hero. I looked up to. I considered him a role model. I went in 2001 when he went into the Hall of Fame. I was there with my brother, with my dad, with a couple of high school friends and parents. We made a trip out of it, and I'm obviously so glad I did. But it came out later in 2001, the abuse and the charges and the cheating or whatever else that Puckett became known for. Unfortunately, that scarred that image of him that I had, and it's been since then. I mean, I had a lot of heroes back before then. Claudel Washington was a hero. Chuck Knobloch is a guy I looked up to as a player. And, for me, the Puckett situation really opened my eyes. I haven't had a hero or a role model in baseball or in football or anything since then. And I encourage parents to kind of make sure that they have that discussion, because when I was a kid, I think it was a good thing to really look up to players on the field, especially when you're playing a sport. But as parents, I think it's our responsibility to say, yeah, he's very good on the field. Because you know what? We don't know what happens beyond the field. I've had the opportunity the last few years to get into the clubhouse and to develop relationships with some Twins players. And I have great opinions on a personal level for several of the Twins players and the minor leaguers, but even then, I don't know them. I'm not there. I don't necessarily know what happens outside of it. And I think it's important for parents to try to separate heroes or favorite players or role models on the field and be able to separate that from, that person is my hero, that kind of thing. And it's really standing to Adrian Peterson be saying, because for my generation, it was Kirby Puckett. There's a generation out there of football fans or of sports fans in general who feel the same way about Adrian Peterson and probably feel almost hurt, almost guilty for really liking this player. And there's some that probably are going to give him excuses or the benefit of the doubt on some things, but at the end of the day, I think as parents, it's important for us to talk to our kids, especially, and my daughter's too young probably to really even understand this, but when they get to an age where they're starting to admire players and get a bigger sense of the bigger picture, I think it's important for us to just help them with that, to say, you know what, you can really admire what they do on the field, but we don't know what they do off the field. That's why, for instance, today at Twins Daily, I posted the Harmon Killebrew Award winners for 2014. That is an award given in honor of Harmon Killebrew, who not only was a great player on the field, but he was a tremendous human being off the field and was giving of himself and of his time in the community. And, the Twins decided to honor one player each year from the minor league system who exemplify that and do things in the community and give all their time and stay out of trouble and all those good things. And this year's winners for Rochester was Logan Darnell, was Tony Thomas in New Britain, was Tim Shibuya in Fort Myers, and it was Tanner Vavra in Cedar Rapids. And I think it's important to remember that these are people. They make mistakes. They have good days. They have bad days. They're just like us, except they're really good at a sport, and they're really good at their profession, just like other people are really good at their professions. And I think sometimes that's lost. And I think it's important to celebrate the good things that people do on and off the field and to kind of set the boundaries for ourselves. So I've rambled. I've kind of felt like a preacher there a little bit. But, I think as much as we get the football thing right now, the NFL is kind of in some trouble. A lot of bad things. The Vikings have 44 arrests in the last 14 or 15 years, which is number one in the league. But at the same time, the Twins aren't perfect in that. They've had their 50-game suspensions. I'm sure they've had some other things that may not get as much notoriety as what's happening in the NFL right now. But it's a good opportunity to have the discussion. I think it's important for adults to have the conversation and the discussion and hear other opinions so that they can kind of work through these types of things with their kids and maybe help each other. So, maybe people have shut off the podcast by now, or maybe I've been talking so long that they muted it or whatever. But I do think, even though we're trying to limit it here, and we could probably talk for a whole hour and a half about this, don't stop watching sports. That's my thought. Some people want to, not watch the Vikings. Well, I've been a fan of the Vikings for 30 years, and one player made a huge mistake, and I disagree with them letting Peterson play, but I'm still going to be a Vikings fan. I'm still a Twins fan after the Puckett stuff. So, just hopefully this discussion and all the discussions you've heard on talk radio or on different articles help us do a better job of moving forward in the conversation and being better parents to our kids.
Yeah,
Over.
I mean, there's so much to say, but the fact of the matter is, like you said, this guy's really good at his job, and it's a job that the public sees for 3 hours a week. And what this guy does the other 200 hours essentially of the week, we don't know. Character-wise, he's been in the news before, and he obviously grew up in a home where dad ended up in prison, and I believe it was drugs, and he has how many different children with how many different women. I mean, character-wise, this isn't a guy that parents should say, hey, watch him and try to be like him. And Adrian Peterson as a parent should be able to be smart enough to say, hey, look at him, my dad, and know that I shouldn't be like him, the guy that beat me as a kid, disciplined me. I mean, wherever you fall on that line, and then ended up in prison selling drugs. I mean, that's not a good role model. So, like you said, we need to do our job as parents, holding, we need to hold ourselves accountable to our children as far as what, we promote to them. But like you said, that Chris Carter said, parents aren't perfect. But, it's on the kids as they grow up then to be able to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. And just because your mom or dad did this doesn't mean it's right. And hopefully some good comes out of this. I mean, obviously at this point there's not a lot of good. Awareness will obviously go up, but it's a sad thing. And at the end of the day, the part that just burns me still is this is a 4-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a 4-year-old kid, and to think that there was a 4-year-old kid that had to be talked to about being beaten. I mean, there's some serious issues with that. 4-year-olds are very innocent, and you know what? 4-year-olds sometimes do something that irritates their parents, and if you're fighting over a video game, that happens. And as humans, how you develop, you need to be taught how to develop correctly and handle those situations correctly. And nowhere is go get the Switch because I'm going to whoop your behind the right way to deal with this. And he's admitted to it. The fact that this has to play out over the course of a year is ridiculous. And while he has the type of money that I would assume he will never do jail time, he should go to jail. Plain and simple. But
yeah, no question. I think you and I mean, we probably sound a little preachy, and I'm sure we both apologize for that. Like I said, I think we think it's an important enough discussion that nobody, is too good to have the discussion. So I think it's important that we have the discussion. You and I'm sure, I know I have made mistakes in my life that I would like to take back in some cases, or that I've learned from. And even as a parent, and we're not perfect. I mean, I'm sure I've done things that a book or a parenting advice person would probably disagree with. But like you said, at no point did that mean injure or hit or any of that kind of stuff. So I think, I don't know, it's a frustrating topic because it's come up too much. I mean, you got the Ray Rice situation, the Hardy situation, the guy in San Francisco is Ray McDonald, and now this, which, again, like you said, the fact that it's a 4-year-old little kid going against a
monster, a human
6'3",
monster,
230-pound elite athlete. It's so crazy to me. It's unbelievable, and I don't even know. I mean, there's like you said, there's so many side topics of this that we can dive into. But I mean, I think I don't know. If nothing else, maybe the positive from this is that it is creating a conversation throughout the country, throughout sports fans, and hopefully there are people out there who either are doing these types of things to their kids and take a look at it when it's on a bigger scale and say, I can't be doing that. I hope there's enough people out there that are learning from this, that it makes, at the end of the day, something positive from the situation. Because really right now it's a black eye on the NFL and on sports in general, where this I don't know, perception that they can just get away with anything. And I hope that isn't the perception, but I think it is. And that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of good in sports, and there's a lot of good people in sports, and frankly, it's probably 20 to 1 good people to bad people, or more.
Right.
Maybe it's 25 to 1, maybe it's 50 to 1, but it still is bad eggs, so to speak, that kind of ruin it for everyone else. The NHL, the NFL should be a good thing.
Right.
Other than the concussions and the injuries and all those kind of things too, but I don't know. I mean, like you said, there's so many angles we could go with this discussion. We've only spent about 15 minutes on it, and we could probably do a whole show on it. But anyway, I'll let you finish up that topic, and I do have just a couple of quick hitters before we call it a show.
You come with the quick hitters, as long as it's not with a switch.
Right. Well, I do know that the instructional league has started down at Fort Myers, and in fact today they played in Fort Charlotte. A group of them went up there. I'm not sure how that went, and there's no box scores and things like that. One report that I have had that I think is very exciting out of Fort Myers and the Twins training camp is that allegedly, or reportedly, JT Charzois is hitting 97, 98, 99 down there. So to me, that's pretty encouraging 1 year after he went through Tommy John surgery. So that's one thing. So that's the other thing is, like we talked about earlier, I did a few Twins Daily polls, and one of them was, who do you prefer to win, the AL Central or to do well in the playoffs, the Royals or the Tigers? Because right now I believe they're within 2 games, probably about a game and a half or a game away from each other in the division. I think the Tigers are leading that. And overwhelmingly, like 14 to 1, the response was, that's an easy question. Of course, the Royals. So in 30 seconds or less, why do we hate the Tigers so bad?
I don't know. I just hate the Tigers. I hate the Tigers. There's no reason. Because they're successful, probably. I mean, that if your question was to make the playoffs and do well, I would want the Royals to be that team. If your question was, which team do you want to make the playoffs and get swept in round 1 and look like they're overmatched, I absolutely take the Tigers, because I want them to not do well.
Right.
I don't have anything against the Royals, so yeah, I'll take the Royals.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the Royals haven't done it in a long time. They've kind of built the team, the organization, the way I think the Twins are trying to, and the way the Twins have done so in the past. Kind of more built from within and then supplement from there. Whereas the Tigers have basically become the Yankees the last 5 years, and although that wins well during the season, it's not like that's been a huge success in the long run. So I personally prefer the way the Royals are doing it than the way the Tigers are doing it, and I hope the Twins do it eventually and the way that the Royals did it. And I think that's it for me. Plus, there's been one game 162, and the Tigers have been around and good for quite some time now.
Right. Got any more heavy hitters there?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, our 1 hour actually was more like 1 hour and 45 minutes. So thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be back next Tuesday, hopefully talking about more Twins wins and less serious issues at the end of the podcast. So thanks for sticking along with us, and we will see you next Tuesday night.